one of our officers, Tony Luca, he's been on for 32, 33 years now. He was reading the paper and calls up the chief and I and says, "Hey, did you know that a Carver police officer was killed?" To summarize it, Chief Vaughan, who I'm not sure if that title came after the incident or before the incident, because town records mainly refer to them as constables then, but they were sworn officers, which is different than a constable today. Chief Vaughan had gone to get an arrest warrant for a guy named John Monty. Mr. Monty worked for one of the Atwoods as a bog worker. It's October or September, so it's picking season, and you know, just as today we have migrant workers come in sometimes, and their bosses are the foremen of the bogs, and the bogs are owned by families mostly. And Mr. Monty, working for Mr. Atwood, had threatened him with a knife. So Chief Vaughan had gone to the local clerk magistrate, who worked in town. It's something out of like an old movie where everything happened in one little town. It's not like the district courts and everything we have now. And Chief Vaughan got the arrest warrant, applied for it, and received an arrest warrant. And when they tried to execute the warrant is when Mr. Monty attacked Chief Vaughan and Officer Atwood. The accounts that I've read have said that when they went to it'd be like a bog shanty. There aren't really any, there are very few examples left in town anymore, but they had migrant worker homes. They were small shacks, or, you know, 1 or 2 room dwellings that the migrant workers would live in. And when they went to arrest Mr. Monty, when they went into the house, he attacked them with a knife. Accounts say that Chief Vaughan threw his revolver to Officer Atwood, and the struggle went out of the house into the dirt road, where Officer Atwood shot and killed Mr. Monty. Officer Atwood had also been seriously wounded, having received some stab wounds, I know, at least to the arms. And Mr. Monty was instantly killed. The Officer Atwood and Chief Vaughan were brought into a home nearby, the home of Gustav Long, who was the Cranberry Bog owner where the incident happened. Mr. Atwood was brought to the Jordan Hospital the next day to receive treatment for his wounds, and Chief Vaughan died 3 days later. I believe in Middleborough is where his death certificate says. Well, see, I think if you read the accounts back then, like, they summoned an ambulance and it came the next day for Mr. Atwood. I mean, to go to Jordan Hospital. So actually, Chief Vaughan was initially treated in Gustav Long's house by, I think in the articles the doctor's name, and I don't remember him. So there was a doctor, and I think the doctor that's normally in Carver wasn't around, so a doctor from Plymouth came over. They go into great detail with this stuff. Ultimately, Chief Vaughan's death certificate was, whether they did an autopsy or what, but the medical examiner signed it over in Middleborough. Mr. Monty was shot in the head, so I don't think he received all indications I have is he received no treatment or anything. And he was eventually brought to the medical examiner in Plymouth and was buried over, I don't remember which cemetery in Plymouth. See, I majored in history, so I understand a lot of it, but to some extent it's mind-boggling to me that you know, somebody like this gets lost to history. Today they wouldn't. There'd be some type of memorial. There'd be a permanent record, obviously. So it's kind of sad that he was lost to history, and you also wonder how many other stories are out there just like this. Yeah, I think it's important that Chief Vaughan is honored and remembered. Police officers dying back then, or all the way up into the 1970s, it wasn't documented the way it is today, and those people deserve to be remembered for the service. They gave an ultimate sacrifice, and they really deserve to be remembered. 33 officers were killed in the line of duty last year, and here's the everybody from Massachusetts. I printed out by state for you.
Okay,
So
excellent.
you have Duxbury,
Yeah.
because Officer Dyer was killed over in, I believe, Marshfield. East Bridgewater, you got Albert Sakosha, and then Carver. I don't know much about the Tinsboro and Oxford, unfortunately.
Right.
We had one of the oldest submissions. I think it's important that Chief Vaughan be remembered and receive the honor and